Servus, Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I want today talk about the question, will Poland leave the EU very soon? Or what is going on between the EU and Poland at the moment? Some of you might have heard about it. There is a legal dispute. It is about the question, what is number one? What has priority? The Polish constitution and Polish laws, or EU contracts and EU laws? Of course, there are supranationalists, pro-EU pundits, and also many globalists who want to spin this another way, but this is what is at the core of this question. So you might have seen headlines like this where it says that the EU plans to punish Poland for not complying with EU regulations or with EU law. In today's video, I want to do the usual for my channel. In the first part, I want to give you the facts as I read them or as I see them, going from the general to the more concrete in this case. And then towards the middle or the end of the video, I will work in more and more of my opinion, which is of course present throughout the video, obviously anyway. Alright, but before we start, I want to give a big shout out to my supporters and my subscribers. Thank you so very much. If you like to see more material like that, like, share and subscribe. And also if you want to have more frequent uploads, consider making a donation or supporting me via Patreon or Subscribestar. Links are in the description box down below. Some of you might have read the headlines also that the EU is seeking to take revenge on Poland and to penalize them, to punish them, to have them pay a fine or to cut all EU payments to Poland right now, while of course forcing Poland to still pay to the EU. Bear in mind, Poland is one of the biggest or maybe even the number one beneficiary from the membership in the EU if you count the payments towards Brussels versus everything that you get in agricultural subsidies or in other payments from the EU. Infrastructure projects come to mind, for example. So Poland has gained a lot financially from being in the EU, but they disagree with a lot of things that are decided in Brussels, as do many people in other EU countries also, for example. And most of us were never asked if we want to be in such a United States of Europe organization or not. Or like many Brexiteers said, that we joined a common trade area or trade zone with low tariffs or no tariffs, but then we found ourselves in a Soviet Union style dystopia. So let me ask you that question in a different way. What is the probability? What do you think that when you take all these distinctly different ethnicities or groups in Europe or nations, whatever you want to call them, with their own traditions, with their own legal traditions and customs and their own constitutions and so on, right? And then you want one EU law on the top that is like a super constitution. Normally, all the laws in a nation, in a democratic nation, have to conform to the constitution, and there is a constitutional court that checks whether or not a new law or a practice or whatsoever is constitutional. And now you take all these countries and you put on top of it a super constitution where all the constitutions and all the laws in the respective member states have to conform to. So what are the odds? That's my question, that this law, this European law that you come up with, is in complete accordance with all these national laws. The probability for that, in my opinion, is precisely zero. So a lot of laws had to be changed and a lot of things had to be made conforming with European legislation and contracts in advance or later. But the Polish, well, they don't want to bend that far, it seems. They want to stick to their traditions and to their own constitution, and that is the fundamental, the underlying dispute here. And I can only say, and this is my opinion now, more power to them. I fully agree with what Poland is doing right now. You should not allow European law to supersede or to cancel or even to turn around and twist your national law. And now let's move on to the more concrete, to the actual dispute at hand. And that is, as far as I I was told or as I have read in the media, it is about a justice reform and also about the filling of seats in the Constitutional Court of Poland, or Constitutional Tribunal as it is called in English, I think. I don't want to go on too long of a tangent, but let's just say the previous government of Poland that was dominated, or the same, that is the lower house of the Polish legislature, back then was still dominated by the civic platform, and they wanted to fill some soon to be vacated or vacant seats in this constitutional tribunal, the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Poland. And some of them it was their right to fill. And by the way, let me just tell you, these seats in the High Court are filled by a majority decision in the Sejm, so in the lower house. Parliament decides who's gonna be a justice in that court, who's gonna serve as a judge there. And there were some seats that were due to be filled by them in their legislative period still, but there were some other seats that were just soon to be filled, but after the election. But they said, well, that's soon enough, so let's fill them all right now. And that was clearly illegal. So what did the other party do? The Law and Justice Party, that is more a traditionalist party. It's not really a right-wing party, but a rightish, more traditionalist conservative party. Well, they said, we fill those seats that we were supposed to fill and the ones that you filled earlier also. That is at least how I understood what was going on there. So it seems like both of these larger parties in Poland were not really taking the constitution or the proper formal way of filling seats at the Constitutional Tribunal very seriously, to be honest here. But it is my understanding that they are dealing with this at the moment internally. And let me just tell you, compared to what goes on in France and Germany right now, this is really a very, very small affair. It is not a big deal compared to the violations of fundamental rights of citizens and to the unconstitutional, undemocratic actions that are taken at the moment against the citizens in Italy, in France, in Germany, wherever you look almost in Western Europe or in Central Europe for that matter. But I have to add, I am not a lawyer and I'm not a constitutional expert. I'm not an international law expert, even though it seems like this is not a protected label or something. Everybody can say they are an expert on international law. It doesn't matter. I could claim that, but I'm not. So if the EU says now, okay, we do not accept your law in Poland, we do not accept your legal traditions, we do not accept your constitution, you should accept our constitution. Let's look at the European Court of Justice. That is the Supreme Court of the EU or in the European Union zone for matters in European Union law. And that is not a constitution, but it is something like a constitution. That is the law, the supreme law, that all the constitutions and all the other laws, as I said previously, have to be in accordance with. That is, so to speak, some kind of a constitution then. And the European Court of Justice would thus be some kind of a Supreme Court or a constitutional court. So let's look at how the seats at the European Court of Justice are filled. What is the process here? Are they elected by some kind of parliament? We have a parliament, a EU parliament, and that is elected by the European people. So is that parliament deciding who's gonna be a judge in this European Court of Justice, just like the Sejm, the lower house of the Polish legislature, how they decide who's gonna be a justice or a judge in their constitutional tribunal? No, of course not. What do you think? Nothing in the EU is democratic. The judges at the European Court of Justice are merely appointed by the governments of the member states, which would be something like the European Council, but it's not. It's really actually the governments that somehow pick them, and if nobody complains, then hey, you're a judge at the European Court of Justice. Congratulations! So let me ask you this question now. What is more democratic? Where do the people have a more direct control or have a say at all in the question of who is gonna be a judge at the European Court of Justice, who is, so to speak, a guardian of European law, or to make sure that the European law is also realized in the law of the member states, for example. And the answer is, of course, in my opinion at least, very clear. Nothing at the EU level is democratic. We have a parliament that is elected by the people in regular elections, but then this parliament has very little to say, and it is only where national governments dump politicians who recently had a scandal or who are old and senile, and that costs a lot of money. It is a huge parliament that does very little for the people, and it does a lot for political parties and for the establishment. It is a gravy train for the elites, or let me rephrase that, for the actors who are supposed to be the satraps of the actual elites, who are their enforcers, who have to sell the will of the elites or to enforce that with the people in our societies. All right, now you have the background information. So the original question is, will Poland leave the EU now? I think there will be an escalation, of course, but Poland said that they consider themselves as part of the family of European nations or European tribes or whatever. And yeah, of course they are. They are a Central European people, and just like the Germans, they belong into Europe or into the family of European people. But that doesn't necessarily mean the European Union. And once again, I hate it when the media and politicians, they try to use the word Europe or European as synonymous with EU. That is absolutely not the case. That is despicable, that is disgusting. I am very pro-European, but I am anti-EU. And they always say anti-European or pro-European when they mean anti-EU or pro-EU establishment like Brussels. And also, I said previously, Poland is benefiting financially, economically a lot from being in the EU. And they will see how hard it was made for the Britons to leave the EU. And they will probably think twice or even 3 times before they will pull that trigger. I think Poland has just financially, economically too much to lose, and they will not want to do that, but they are a very proud people. One should never underestimate the pride and the will to self-determination, national self-determination of the Polish people. You don't have to be a history buff or an expert at Polish history in order to understand that. So who knows, even though it might come as a big inconvenience and a very expensive or a very lossy for them, they might go for it. But I personally don't think so. I think they want to see how far they can go. And with Angela Merkel out of the way now, maybe they think that the EU, the Western European countries or whatever, that they are weakened now. Maybe they see that as some sort of opportunity even, in the same way as these Southerners, these French and Italian people, they want, or their leaders, let's say, they see the exit of Angela Merkel from the Chancellor's office in Germany. They see that as some window of opportunity to get these Euro bonds and this European healthcare and European social security system going, where basically their pensions and their social security programs would be directly funded by German taxpayers. That's what they try to do. And maybe in the same way, the Polish see that their chance now has come to get some legal divorce from the EU, not in the other sectors, but legally, their legal systems, their constitutions and their national law, that they can defend that and conserve that against the influences of Brussels, of the EU, with their tendency and their desire to make everything conform to their ideas and to make everything equal in all the member states. All right, that was my summary and my personal take on this affair. I will, of course, revisit that subject if I see that something fundamentally new is happening. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for tuning in once again. I will be back next week, of course, with more news from Germany and Europe. Take care. Servus, Kameraden.